This video is about how more addition of integers and rational numbers. In lesson 222, you use integers to represent lengths in two directions. You began to think about plus and minus tiles to represent this forward and backward movement. Today, you will use plus and minus tiles to model expressions with integers, assigning the plus value a tile of 1 plus 1 and the minus tile a value of -1. -1. In your teams, think about these questions as you work. Can we show what an integer represents in more than one way? What can we do if the numbers are very large? Okay, this first example says Jimmy and June each have a bag of plus and minus tiles. They reached into their bags and pulled out piles. Their piles are shown below. The question is, whose pile has the greatest value? So every time you have a plus and a minus, they cancel each other out and become 0. So this would equal 0, this would equal 0, and this would equal 0. So Jimmy has a value of 2. June, these cancel, 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 cancel. June has a value of 1. So it says whose pile is greater? The answer is Jimmy's, because 2 is greater than 1. So in this next set of problems, what we're going to do is you could click on the link and we could build them with plus and minus tiles. We're just going to draw them. So it says sketch each collection of plus or minus tiles and find the value of the expression. Write the solution as an equation. So for A, I have 7 negatives. And then underneath it, I'm going to draw that I have 3 positives. So these all go to 0, because for every one negative and one positive, I get 0. So I'm left with -4. So my solution is -7 plus 3 equals -4. For B, I have 5 negatives, and then I have 3 negatives. None of them cancel each other out, so I'm just left with a total of 8 negatives. So I get -5 plus -3 equals -8. For C, I have 2 positives and 4 negatives. These cancel, and I'm left with -2. So 2 plus -4 equals -2. For D, I have 7 negatives, another 7 negatives, and then I get -14 because none of them cancel out, which is actually a common mistake. People see the 2 negatives and both of them 7 and think they would cancel each other out. But if you draw it, it clearly shows that -7 plus -7 equals -14. So then E, the -4 plus 3, 3 of them cancel each other out, and I'm left with -1. So -4 plus 3 equals -1. F, I'm going to draw 4 negatives, positive 8, 27, 8, and then another 2 negatives. All of these cancel, so I'm left with +2. So -4 plus 8 plus -2 equals +2. Okay. For the next one, I have -3, +5, and then another +3. So 3 of them cancel, and I'm left with +5. And the 3's cancel each other, so that could have been an indication that I was just going to be left with 5. And finally, H, I have 6 negatives, 6 positives. They all cancel each other out. So -6 plus 6 gives me 0. So then it says, think about the problems you have worked on involving positive and negative numbers. How would you find the answer to negative 200 plus 14? Without using your calculator, find the sum, explain your reasoning to your teammates, and be prepared to describe your strategy. For this problem, when we think of them having different signs, we think about subtraction. So like when we had the smaller numbers, like negative 6 and 6, we subtract the 6's and get 0. So first you would do 200 minus 14. 200 minus 10 is 190, 186. And then it would be negative because there's more negatives than positives. Okay. For the next set of problems, it says use that method you discussed with your teammates, simplify the expression below. So we have negative 100 plus 50. So I'm going to subtract them and be left with 50, and it's going to be negative because 100 is bigger. 30 and 60 are both negative, so I can envision drawing 30 negatives and another 60 negatives, so I would get negative 90. So I'm going to do the negative numbers first. This is negative 55 plus 45. I envision subtracting them. So I'm left with negative 10. This last one, I'm going to add together the positives. So 160 plus 75, and also add together the negatives. So I get 500 and 235 plus a negative 59. Then five 12 is 176, and it's positive because 235 is bigger.